drives. Also in the presentation is Juliet Sarnin. She is also an automation specialist at Applied. She's going to be handling the majority of the demo portion of this presentation, and I'll be doing most of the PowerPoint that which you're about to see. That being said, let's get started here. For those of you that are not aware of Applied Controls and what we do exactly, we are a local, employee-owned, high-tech automation distributor and solutions provider. We educate and support local manufacturers in implementing emerging technologies to reduce cost, increase productivity, and improve safety. And I'm sure most of you are aware, our offerings range from industrial computers and software to robotics, machine vision, and motion control. We have a staffed solutions team, specialist team that's here to support all the technology that we sell, which really gives us an edge over most distributors. So today's presentation is about the SIMATIC ET200 SP2 open controller, which you can see right in front of you. The SIMATIC ET200 SP2 open controller is a unique controller that sits as a mid-level S7 1500 in the portfolio of SIMATIC controllers that Siemens offers. It's almost like controllers. That's because it's a little bit of an S7 1500, a little bit of a distributed controller because of its ET200 SP form factor, and it's also a PC-based controller or software controller, depending on how you look at it. It's a unique controller, hence why it has a whole presentation and demo specifically designed for it. The SP2 is a very recent addition to our automation portfolio, so let me give you some more information on this controller. So as I mentioned, this controller is a combined S7 1500 based distributed controller together with a PC-based controller, so you can see advantages on both sides of that spectrum. First, it's extremely compact. It requires reduced space requirements within the control cabinet. It's extremely scalable and expandable. You can use it in a single standalone application with a centrally configured ET200 SP, or you can use it with a distributed configuration, or you can network the two together and have a distributed controller architecture as well. Of course, it is a PC-based controller inside, so you have multiple tasks on a single device. This is your controller, your HMI, and Windows application on a single CPU. You can integrate third-party software very easily together with your control program, since it is a PC-based controller. It can handle extremely complex control tasks because you can integrate C and C++ programs, as well as things like Simulink and any other PC-based applications together with the control program. This is exactly why it has turned and coined the name Swiss Army knife of controllers. One thing I want to be clear on with this controller, I did mention that it runs Windows and it is a software controller. The controller does not run on Windows. These are two separate systems connected by what's called a Siemens hypervisor, almost like a backplane between the kernel of the software controller and the Windows kernel. But the Windows system and the software utilize the hardware on the physical device. This is a huge advantage for us because if Windows encounters an error or you need to update Windows, you do not have to stop the control program to do so. They're completely independent. As mentioned before, you can run the HMI on the PC right next to the controller. So on that single device, you have your controller and your HMI, plus all of the advanced control tasks that you get with the PC side of things. So let's take a look at what the automation environment looks like for the ET200 SP Open controller. Of course, you program the control program, aka the soft PLC that resides on Windows, with SIMATIC TI portal, just like any other Siemens PLC. If you want to integrate C, C++, or any other PC-based applications, you would use SIMATIC ODK 1500S, SIMATIC Target 1500S, which gives you Simulink and things like MATLAB, and of course, Microsoft Visual Studio C++, which is free with Windows. Please keep in mind that the SIMATIC ODK 1500S and Target 1500S are paid for licenses, so they are not included with the SP2 controller natively. You don't need all of these tools if you don't want to integrate the third-party applications, but they're obviously available to do so if you do, and hence the licensing for those other packages. Of course, on the runtime side, you see you only have the SIMATIC S7 1500 software controller, and that just kind of drills the point of having the Windows side of things and the soft controller side of things decoupled. Here you see a picture of the controller up close. So let me go into some details on some of the highlights of this controller. This hardware is an Intel quad-core processor. On the device itself, you'll see there is a display port for video output, two USB 3.0, hence the blue coloring on the USB ports, and two USB 2.0, hence the black coloring on the two USB ports. Those USB ports can be used for keyboards, USB sticks, or any other peripheral devices that you may plug into this computer. There's also a 3-port switch also built into this device. You can see the first on the front face of the device, and the other two reside on the bus adapter facing towards the ground, which you can see right here. The bus adapter is something you purchase separately. This was done on purpose so that you can decide what media interface you want to add to this device. This controller comes in a few different versions as well. There's obviously the standard version, which you see on the screen. It also comes as failsafe and also comes as a technology version. And there are also packages that come bundled with an HMI runtime as well, because you can have the run HMI on the PC side and save yourself the separate hardware, like a separate panel of some sorts. As far as an operating system goes, it runs on Windows 10 Enterprise 64-bit LTSB 2016, and I'll explain what that means in a second. And there's also a Linux version available as well. And of course, since it is part of the ET200SP family and form factor, it does support all the cards from those devices as well. I'll tell you more about the bus adapters. There are some versions that will allow you to connect to the ET200AL and the ASI as well. Those are standard SP cards, so of course they're going to work with this controller since they have the ET200SP form factor. So in this graphic, we'll see an up-close view of the various ports and memory slots and dimensions of the controller. Like I mentioned before, you can see the display port on the top left. You can see the 4 USB ports on the bottom left right here. And of course the bus adapter, which is right next to the Ethernet ports in the display port. Like I said earlier, these are the second and third ports of the 30-port switch right here on the bus adapter. You could see the power and status LEDs right to the right. You have a CFast card on the right as well. The CFast card stores your Windows runtime and project. You have a run-stop switch as well, just like any other S7-1500, and you have a slot for an additional SIMATIC memory card to store the user program. And of course, like I said, because it is an ET200 SP-based controller, it's a similar backplane. It's an SP backplane, sorry about that. It's very expandable like any other ET200 SP CPU, so you can use the cards in the ET200 SP distributed I/O line. So if you look at the dimensions of the controller, which you can see on the top and bottom, or bottom and left, it's 160 millimeters wide and 117 millimeters in height. It's obviously a very compact design for all of the power that it has. Let me say a few more things about this bus adapter since I've mentioned it on the last few slides. Like I said, this is purchased separately from the main unit so that you can specify what media interface your application requires. So as you can see, there are several types of bus adapters available. The two on the left are copper connections. You have the option between 2 RJ45 ports or 2 fast connect ports. These connections are good up to about 100 meters in distance because of their copper nature, the attenuation that you would see across those signals. If you look at the 3 in the center, these are good up to 300 meters in distance. These connections are plastic fiber optic, hence the increased distance. So they come in the option of a J plug, an RJ45 port, and a fast connect as well. If you have a very long distance connection, you can also use glass fiber optic connections. You have 3 versions for this distance as well. The first being 2 glass fiber optic connections, the second being 1 RJ45 and 1 glass fiber optic connection, and the third being 1 fast connect and 1 glass fiber optic connection. So there are plenty of options for the bus adapter depending on your configuration for using this controller and how distributed it may be. This is obviously a very rugged controller as well. And not to read the entire screen, but a couple things to point out. The operating temperature is -20 to 60 degrees Celsius. It is IP20, so it is not protected from condensation, but it will go all the way down and be supported in -20 degrees Celsius. And you can use it in altitudes up to 2,000 meters. After that, you'd have to derate the device. As I mentioned, there are 2 USB ports, maximum current of, 2 USB 3.0 ports with a maximum current of 1 amp per interface, and there are 2 USB 2 ports with a maximum of a 0.5 amp per interface. Of course, the testing is shown on the screen. In terms of ruggedness, this controller is obviously very rugged, especially considering all of the functionality that's innate to it.
But I just want to reinforce that the web server can be connected over internet as well. The customer would just need to set up a firewall and et cetera for full security purposes. Now, depending on how you want to set up the web server, you can have multiple under the alarms window here. Again, I can change the view setting of that. Let's see, I'm gonna take that wire break out and you'll see the alarms. The alarm for that will go away. Now